This whole thing about personalization as far as customer experience is concerned is not really working in the B2B context. What works best is transparency. The customer wants to buy clarity from a service provider, and using the customer as an anchor, we were able to launch several features, products, or simple better selling efforts, better service processes around a specific type of customers. The whole focus was to create once and replicate to many. Like, for example, I remember GCCs, which I worked very closely with. They wanted a certain type of feature which helps them replicate data across the data centers in the world in a very crisp, clear, speedy manner. We went back and corrected our entire infrastructure to serve that
Why
need.
do you think this mishappens?
This mishappens because traditionally marketing has played a very siloed or a very independently driven agenda, which is in B2B: do some launches, do some roundtables, publish some articles, create some collaterals, at best maybe generate some leads which eventually go to GTM. The most important point wherein I believe marketing should take the most elevated role is launching new products. Before the launch, product is working on it, engineering is working on it. Post the launch, GTM gets involved. The marketer of yesterday, his job used to start by getting an input from product and ending with launch. That is absolutely not relevant. And then you look for the next launch to be made. Beautiful article getting created, a couple of roundtables, and so on and so forth. No, marketing needs to qualify whether the product that you're launching crosses three filters or four filters. Firstly,
Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Marketing Couch. I'm Jaideep. Today's guest is not our usual marketing leadership profile. My guest today has been on the receiving end of B2B marketing for 30 years. He's got some frameworks that will change how you think about enterprise marketing. Meet Avinash Deepak. Avinash managed $200 million in business at Airtel, served over 500 enterprise clients, and he knows exactly what makes buyers say yes or no. We spoke about his Monday morning test that every product launch must pass, his four filter framework for go to market success, why features don't sell but business outcomes do, and his five P's of customer experience that actually drive revenue growth. Plus, his MAP framework for building high performing teams and the asymmetric strength approach to strategic partnerships. Now, these aren't theories, these are battle tested frameworks from someone who's been in the trenches for 3 decades. If you are getting value from these conversations, hit that subscribe button and share this episode with a fellow B2B marketer who needs to hear this. With that, I bring you Avinash Deepak. Hi, Avinash. It is good to have you on the marketing couch today.
hi Jaideep, it's a pleasure to be on the call. Thank you so much for inviting me.
Great. The pleasure is mine. And I'm very excited about this conversation. You know why? Because, I often talk to marketers who are usually my counterpart, not counterpart, they are my peers, right? But the fact that your profile is from GTM slash sales and you played a very strategic role for one of the largest telecom service providers in this country makes you a very unique and an interesting guest on my podcast. And I'm really looking forward to your point of views, not just on the business side, but I'm also going to be curious about your working relationship with marketing team, who I would imagine would be your counterpart all along. We have this tendency to sort of bifurcate sales and marketing in a hard way. In reality, basically all of these functions are supposed to be working a lot more in interjections or in convergence with each other, and we'll talk about it. But let's get started, Avinash. So my first question to you is, in your customer facing GTM slash sales role, what has been your experience where you have seen marketing really shined, in your opinion, where you had good experiences and you have seen things really happening, two teams working together closely? On the other hand, what would be those occasions where you saw that there was a huge potential for marketing to make a difference, and therefore the overall organizational impact or a customer experience part could have been a lot bigger? Marketing probably has not been able to do that. Could be for various reasons. I would be interested to know what you think.
So that's a good question. Let me see. I think let me start with a journey which was a little, you know, earlier as far as I am concerned, about a decade back or maybe 5 years back, wherein marketing played a back-end support role by design or by lack of leadership, so to say. In B2B, I believe, unlike in B2C, conversations happen on the ground which are very real on a daily basis. The buyer and the seller interact with each other. The person who serves, they interact. There's a daily interaction. Now, that is extremely precious and real. And it is dynamic because it does change. It changes by vertical, by territory, by time. There's a lot of seasonality in the change of conversations. Technology affects it in a big manner. If marketing sort of approaches their task in a siloed manner, wherein, look, I have a product to launch and or a brand message to peddle or some leads to generate, I think if they miss out on these ground conversations, there's a big opportunity lost in really bringing out a product which is truly meaningful to the customer, to the person who's selling, to the person who's serving, within the customer organization, the buyer, the influencer, the recommender, the end beneficiary, and so on and so forth. There's a big miss as far as
And why do you think it?
not
Why
interacting.
do you think this mishappens?
This mishappens because traditionally marketing has played a very siloed or a very independently driven agenda, which is in B2B: do some launches, do some roundtables, publish some articles, create some collaterals, at best maybe generate some leads which eventually go to GTM. Let me give you a contrasting, story or a situation tremendously successful, wherein we collaborated with marketing. In fact, let me name, I operate very closely. I used to operate very closely during my days at Airtel with my marketing head, Kaustubh Chandra. I can name him KC for short.
Sure, yeah, I know
And day one, we
Kaustav.
got
He was
together.
my colleague at IBM.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Day one, we started sitting and penning down each other's problems. How can we leverage each other's functions from a opportunity standpoint? And it was very clear, quickly, that we as sales cannot function effectively without marketing coming into the play, and vice versa. They realized there is so much of rich conversation, data points which the field has, which can be incorporated in marketing. One example to that is, I was always based out of South most of my time in my career, and one of the mandate that I was leading for the organization was to really create a compelling story for startups. And we went about it in a manner which was very local in nature. We launched some products, some bundles. We used the local Bangalore available incubators to peddle it, and it was doing reasonably okay. Not that it made a big impact that it had to be noticed or replicated, and so on and so forth. But when the business team, the sales team, and the marketing team got together on this purpose of creating a startup agenda, we realized some 6 or 7 points came out, which was very, very powerful, right? And we contexted the story, the narrative towards those points, right? And we realized that the organization that we were designed at that point in time and doing brilliantly well, to serving a factory, to serving a delivery center, to serving a bank branch, and so on. But somehow, born in the cloud organizations weren't quite, we were not getting the story right. Marketing, business, for that matter, product, even customer experience got together, huddled, and created a agenda, a story. We called it Tech Blaze, so to say. It took us 6 to 7 months to create it, and what was an insignificant number suddenly grew to be a very sharp, relevant focus. It became one of the top verticals, sharpest growing verticals within the organization, and it became a national agenda, catching attention of the leadership. A lot of resource investment, a lot of partners showed interest in aligning with us to go to the market. So that's one great example wherein marketing and the business teams came together, the sales teams came together and created something really meaningful and all encompassing rather than working in silos. I think
Understood.
there's a tremendous amount of opportunity in this collaboration.
Understood. One of the areas that I want to probe into a little bit, maybe to setting that context, can you share what was the business context of working with the startups, and how did this come about, and why Airtel was partnering with the startup? Just for
It's a good
my
question.
context for my
Telco,
audience.
as a telco, we were great in connecting offices. As I said, factory, branches, delivery centers, and what have you. We were the best in the country. At that point in time, we still, I mean, Airtel still is a very dominant figure as far as that aspect is concerned. But then when you go to a startup, a born on the cloud company, he does not have offices. He's on the cloud. His customer connects in the cloud. His product is in the cloud. His service, everything is in the cloud. They, by the way, have a couple of small offices, which is essentially for people to sit and drive operations and so on and so forth. So the narrative had to be different. We got together and changed the narrative to serve them in the cloud, created products, or rather repurposed our existing products, brought products which were not quite center focus right into the agenda, saying that we can use, for example, IoT to track your fleet as they travel within the country. We can help your delivery boys deliver faster as they sort of deliver. We can allocate tickets better to a logistics individual as he's delivering to whoever he does. We can help your contact centers more become more efficient, and so on and so forth. It was digital, in terms of a focus. And if you realize, I have not really spoken about a product other than IoT. The conversation changed towards a business outcome, and not just saying that or focusing on a better SLA or a better performance or a better pricing of our own products, right? It changed towards being relevant to the customer's business. These organizations appreciate that, right? And as I said, it was a very, very enriching journey to go through. There were many times that we faltered. I'm not saying it was easy. Many times when we were dead sure, we sort of fell flat on our faces, saying that, oh, this is not working, let's think through something else. But then eventually it did find feet to run, and then is doing pretty well right now.
Fantastic. So that gives me a good context to your actual background, which is you were in a leadership role for over a decade in Airtel, and overall, I think you have worked, probably with Airtel for about 2 decades, if I'm not mistaken,
I spent 18 years at Airtel.
which is basically effectively 2 decades. And you have seen during that period not just the market transforming, but also the organization and its offering transforming to suit to the market, right? And you led transformation for Airtel from a traditional telecom provider to a technology focused B2B solutions company. What were the most critical component of this transformation strategy, if you can share your experience?
That's a great question. Again, I spent 18 years, of course, at Airtel, and many of people, including some of my family members, asked as to why didn't you change. I said, didn't have to, because the organization changed itself every year and a half. There was a new customer, a new technology, a new purpose, and I have seen the ups and downs as far as that journey is concerned. And as I said, it's been very, very enriching, is the word which comes to my mind. In terms of transformation, I think over the last decade, telcos across the globe and in India, specific to Airtel as well, the whole journey has been to shift how we are positioned in the minds of our B2B customers. Uh, the idea for a telco, true blue B2B telco, is to position themselves as a transformation partner and not just a service provider, right? Uh,
Understood.
Specifically, what it means is that from selling specifications, features, as I said, uptime, faster connectivity, etc., the journey has been to gradually change the positioning towards being an outcome led and not a product led setup as far as the B2B context is concerned.
Yeah, in some way, I would think that when you say that probably there was ownership involved as well when you said outcome driven, right? Rather than just a transactional service provider playing a strategic role, taking on responsibility for the outcome as opposed to just the service that I'm delivering right now.
The purpose of the organization, the conversations, the brand representation was on the outcome of the customer's business and not
Mm.
providing pipes, SIM cards, or boxes, so to say. One very efficient way that we drove it through an example I can explain better, that we organized ourselves besides regions, we also organized ourselves around industry verticals over the last decade and differentiated a product how it is aimed at a bank, as I said earlier, or a startup is a great example, logistics, insurance, and so on and so forth. For two reasons. One is we wanted to really understand these verticals better, especially our frontline, and we wanted to repurpose our existing products to serving their outcomes, their business outcomes, as I said in my earlier point. Again, if you go one click down within these verticals, we started focusing half a decade back on different personas. While the CIO was somebody who recognized us and we had a great story to serve him, we also realized that we need to go beyond the CIO as far as our new digital products are concerned. And we did that pretty well in terms of a CMO or a chief operating officer or a chief growth officer or a delivery head and so on and so forth. Another thing which drove propensity towards this positioning shift is bringing in the right partners. We partnered with the globe's best in terms of technology. We also partnered with very purposeful, purpose-driven B2B contexted startups, which brought a flourish of new ideas in terms of technology, such that we remain fresh as far as our organizations, our customers are concerned, and remain relevant to the shift of positioning that we're going through from becoming a product provider to a business solution provider, right? Another great, which is very close to my heart, and I personally led that about, again, 6 or 7 years back, is transforming our sales capability. I think that was the most challenging aspect as far as the organization is concerned. Telecom is a high paced business wherein customers do require you for, and in a company in a country like India, where there are just a handful of quality telecom service providers, you get demand. But the game was to move into a new positioning, as I talked earlier, and in that, a very pivotal role was played by the how we transformed our sales guys from selling and serving and addressing needs to going towards demand generation, which was digital nature. So sales transformation was a key aspect, and we drove that through structured programs wherein the folks in sales could have a conversation which was about the customer's business, talk digital products, talk different personas, and so on and so forth. I think another one we realized, and this could be a message for your audience, is that a great way to become a business oriented partner rather than a product seller is to use the customer himself to create your journeys in terms of a product. So there is a framework called Customer Advisory Board wherein we share our strategies upfront with a bunch of representative customers and check with them as to, is this something which is workable, deployable? Would you like to be a pilot customer, an anchor customer? And including, please recommend to us how should we market and sell this? And the results have been absolutely magical. Of course, these programs need to be very well structured and of meaning to the audience, which we were able to do over a period of time. So these are the few things we have done to
Okay.
transform, a product selling organization to a business solution selling, value addition selling organization per se.
Got it. Obviously, there I can clearly see the transformation in the way the sellers were selling from point offerings, solution offerings, to outcome driven conversation, to transformation stories, and leading from there to customer advisory board, where the whole idea was to co create. That means what we create is something where we already have um, your buy-in before we take it to market. That means, hey, Mr. Customer, you are a special one in our overall B2B landscape of customers, and we are co-creating with you to ensure that a, if this is something that we create, you see a value in it, and therefore you probably are willing to sign up as a pilot customer. come on board and give us feedback, give us review, give us why do you think this something is working, why do you think something is not working. Also tell us how can we take this to market in more effective way so that it resonates with other players, because you are the one who actually are using it, so you become a category representative in that form. So this is truly transformative, and this
Absolutely.
is probably is really a B2B sales, consultative sales, let me put it that way, kind of comes in a good shape and form. What role marketing played in that? I'm just curious about it, Avinash.
Again, very important. As we researched these organizations, marketing played firstly an organizer, let me say, putting the event together. I talked about whether it has context to that specific set of customers. I think marketing played an anchoring role in building context, value for these customers to come and participate. They also analyzed the data along with us, along with the sales team. Actually, I don't say us and them. We are like we never differentiated. At least at my level, marketing was like one team, and I'm sure the marketing guys felt the same thing as far as the sales and the GTM effort was concerned. So together we whiteboarded, we organized data, we structured, we qualified, we tested, and using the customer as an anchor, we were able to launch several features, products, or simple better selling efforts, better service processes around a specific type of customers. The whole focus was to create once and replicate to many. Like, for example, I remember GCCs, which I worked very closely with. They wanted a certain type of feature which helps them replicate data across the data centers in the world in a very crisp, clear, speedy manner. We went back and corrected our entire infrastructure to serve that need. Secondly, they also came and said for us, transparency means something much more than what it would mean to an alternate customer. We just don't want uptime and downtime. We want transparency in terms of risk assessment that we have. So, whenever there was an error, the reporting that we brought about was very crucial in terms of very transparently explaining to them that this is what really happened. This is the chances of it getting recurred. This is what we have done to address it. Or look, we can't do anything about it, so that we are jointly clear about the risk that the service poses to your business operation. These came out of forums like our customer advisory board. Of course, there were several organizations, leaders, including the CEOs, CIOs, which advised us how to create products. For example, when the pandemic was ongoing, one of the top CEOs of one of the big IT organizations advised us how should we create a work from home setup which reached out to employees. How should we create the right package, the right positioning? And once the product was created, he was happy to come and explain it to a forum of his peers, saying that this is how it could help those employees which were residing at the remotest part of the country, developing IT, maintaining IT systems across the globe, and so on and so forth. Similarly, some of our digital platforms which are now very successful were developed by some of our matured startup organizations. Today, when you have a delivery coming to you, you just pick up the phone and talk to your delivery boy, and vice versa, the delivery boy can talk to you. What you don't realize that the numbers are masked. You don't see his number, and vice versa. This framework was completely developed along with the customer, you know to serve a specific
Yeah,
need. Yeah.
yeah, no, I understood. So you spoke about you're partnered with industry's leading tech companies, right? And you have had successful partnership where you built and leverage strategic alliances with likes of Cisco, Microsoft, Oracle, AWS. What kind of, I mean, can you think of what is the kind of framework that can truly accelerate the growth when you work with the right partnership ecosystem or framework or partners?
As you know, B2B partnerships are beginning to mean much more than earlier. The more you partnership today is absolutely vital. If you play solo, you're not going to have a sustainable business. It's very clear, because at the back end, even technologies are converging as far as the organization, as far as the customer organization is concerned. So the first is have a very clear purpose as to why you are partnering. Are you partnering for mutual reach? You reach my customers and vice versa. Are you partnering to make a more comprehensive proposition in terms of technology to a customer? Right? Are you partnering to generate value of brand? I want to be an innovative partner. I want to be an Indian partner, or I want to be a partner which is solving a certain bigger purpose in life. Or are you partnering just for lead generation, for example, which is also fine. The purpose has to be very clearly defined. Second point is, I think it has to be what I would call, you need to play to asymmetric strengths. One needs to complement the other. If one is strong, example, in the top end of the enterprises, and the other is strong as far as mid enterprise is concerned, creating a partnership wherein you give access to each other's together has a very meaningful approach in the long run. That those kind of partnerships have depth.
So
Uh,
basically, what you're saying is that at upfront, you need to sort of have a clear categorization of, are you my GTM partner? Are you my lead gen partner? Are you my technology partner, which basically complements and creates a better and stronger value proposition for my or our joint customers? So that thing needs to be determined at the beginning of that relationship for each partnership.
Absolutely right. The
And
purpose and the value
yeah,
has to be
that
clear.
as to why and how my customer's life is going to get better. At the end of the day, the fundamental purpose remains same for any organization, is to serve your customers in the most meaningful and impactful way to help transform their own businesses, right? I guess that
Precisely.
remains correct.
Yeah.
So just
Allow me to,
switching, sorry.
another important point which I want to make in partnership is that a couple
Sure.
of points. One is, partnership is not resale. That is channeling, right? You know, partnership has to be having colors of contours of bundling, joint selling, co-creation, co-marketing, for it to be a relationship of equals wherein both are equally benefiting. Otherwise, it becomes a parent-child relationship which doesn't go far. Great best practices whenever you co-create. Typically there's a lot of energy which comes into the room when two partners come together and saying that we will change the whole world. But whatever you create has to be piloted in a small sub-segment of the customer for a buy-in. That is of precise importance. Otherwise, you find after 6 or 7 months' time, typically there are hearts which are burned, saying that I had a different expectation, it did not quite work as such. The message to both the partners is that while you partner, don't lose your core value, your core proposition, your name, your brand. Remain relevant as far as the proposition is concerned when you're driving it into the market. Both partners need to look after for each other as far as this aspect is concerned. And finally, look, if it's not working over a period of time, one has to be quick to take a decision to call it off rather than running with the partnership, till it becomes really stale and fades out. That's a limited 2 bits from me.
Fantastic insights. Yeah, I mean, I think our audience who currently are working, especially in the alliance and partner development, these are bedrocks. These are essentially fundamentals on which, the premise on which they should be thinking of building businesses, right? There should be a entry and the exit, both routes, and it could be from either side. Ultimately, two parties join hands to not just for their own growth, but also to ensure that the end customer sort of benefits from this proposition. That's basically the whole idea, right? To strengthen the value proposition or strengthen the the delivery of the brand promise. So Avinash, you also have a track record of translating product features into clear business benefits for B2B markets in general. What kind of what systemic approach would you recommend for leaders or founders alike who struggle to communicate their technical innovations in terms of tangible business value?
That's a very straightforward answer. I think I already covered it earlier. From feature, go to business benefit. Features don't really sell until unless the business benefit is coming out clearly, right?
Okay, let's make it little real, right? So can you give an example that you have had where this becomes real?
Like, I am advising an organization which is into a communication platform, largely for banks and e-commerce organizations and so on and so forth. Great product organization, excellent features, as such, but their business is not growing as sharply as one would expect. We made a small change saying that don't highlight the features of your products. While you talk about the feature, the advantage, the benefit, quickly take it into how will it impact their business? How it is contexted to the current situation. You're going through this today, right? Not something which will change the future. And bring in an emotional angle, as such, that this will transform or this will grow or this will make them look great in front of customers and so on and so forth. I think that is of crucial importance. Another one is, while you talk about relevance or context or B2B personalization, it has to be persona based. You have to transform the feature, the same feature, differently to different personas in the organization. For example, if you're talking to a CTO, right, in this specific case, we talked about the scalability and the easy integration. Or the CFO, we talked about the powerful ROI model which we calculated and showed to them. The same exact feature was going as an ROI efficiency model. If you talk to the CMO, which who also had benefit from this product, we talked about how it is improving agility for his campaigns, or how is it improving. They want to basically position it as a great customer experience improvement driver. How it is changing those metrics. The same exact feature is being positioned differently. Lastly, to translate this, use numbers, not features. That it will save you 22% cost in this specific operation, or it will improve your lead gen by 20%, or it will improve your revenue by 2%, or what it might do, or it will improve CSAT by an X percentage. Customers
Understood.
today,
Yeah.
Jaideep, are wanting to buy results, not code, not features, as such. So the messaging needs to represent that.
It's important for marketers who are hearing this discussion to also relate that to how industrially, jobs to be done framework is followed. Typically, product management team focuses on jobs to be done framework because that discussion is closely related to value versus outcome attachment. And I think it's important that it's not just talking about features and functionalities and keep adding them, but also focusing on what it means for the business that we are serving, right? All right. So just moving from there, I think one of the areas that I really want to talk about is customer experience. And I know that you are an advocate of customer experience, and you have a way to sort of think of customer experience, unlike what sometimes marketers think or specific function thinks. I think you have a more holistic way to sort of look at customer experience. I want you to share how you look at customer experience in the real world.
That's a great question. Again, today's sustainable B2B relationships are anchored on customer experience, not on selling, not on marketing. Eventually, the experience translates into growth and sustaining longevity in terms of a relationship or in terms of business. My framework is the 5 P's. Very quickly, it has to be predictive, has to be proactive, and to do that, you need to work on your product, your people, your processes. From a how to leverage that is, firstly, I spoke about it a little earlier, the moment of truth of all your marketing, your GTM, your product creation is the customer experience. So to marketers, for that matter, to even the GTM owners or the product, the reality that you need to work upon is, once the product is deployed, what is it doing from an experience standpoint to the customer? Is it predictive? Is it proactive? And what have you? It has to be designed towards that. So basically, what I've learned is this whole thing about personalization as far as customer experience is concerned is not really working in the B2B context. What works best is transparency. A customer wants to buy clarity from a service provider. He wants to be clear about the handoff points being clear. He wants to be clear that there are not going to be any repeat issues. He wants to be clear that ROI delivery is going to be sustainable over a period of time, for example. He wants to be clear that this organization understands me. Transparency is what scales in this business much more than anything else. Marketers need to pick that up and bring it to the forefront as to how we are doing it for our existing customers, and therefore attract value from the current, the new segments that one is trying to open up.
Through case studies and through referral testimonials and through stories, right?
Absolutely.
um, Awesome. So, Avinash, you also have led a team, a large team, but not just that. You are also a proponent of someone who believes in an ordinary team can also turn to a high performing team, provided the right type of leadership philosophy is kind of practiced and the result can be delivered through that. Can you talk about that a little bit? While you managed almost a book of business of $200 million, 500 plus clients.
Yeah, I think throughout my career, I've been very passionate about this, and I've strongly believed that when it comes to teams, you don't hire unicorns, you build them. I have two, three philosophies, but I'll talk about one or two which is very passionate, where I've walked that throughout my career. One is inclusion. Long term success is not built on the power of heroes, it's built on the power of system wherein multiple people are involved contributing as such. Heroes don't last, heroes change, right? A hero for a quarter changes to another hero for the next quarter, and so on and so forth. The philosophy that I've used to deploy that, to bring that to life, is what I learned long back from one of the gurus, as such, is MAP: mastery, autonomy, and purpose drives what I call intrinsic motivation for people to deliver, grow, and remain connected to the purpose of the organization. First is purpose. Purpose is not something which is a team purpose, organization purpose. The individual needs to have his own purpose that he finds. And one as a leader needs to align to that purpose. The purpose could be that, yes, I want to change the world. I want to go to the next level. I want to go and, become a star as far as my personal community is concerned. I want to see, I get gratification by seeing impact getting delivered. So, purpose. Allow teams to generate their own purposes besides their organizational purpose that you might already have. Autonomy. Give them space and see magic happen. Space to think, space to action. Allow them as many mistakes, encourage mistakes such that they are open to experimentation and becoming better performers, eventually better leaders. And lastly, one must realize that an individual is in the organization to learn, not just to perform, but to learn to grow. Allow him a space wherein he can master a certain set of aspects and basically showcase that to the rest of the organization, allowing him to scale. So MAP, mastery, autonomy, purpose, is a strong acronym that I believe in. I drive that on my daily basis as far as whatever I do, whether it's at workplace, sometimes in my family as well. And I found great gratification in owning this concept as such. Yeah.
Excellent. So, one challenge in the real world is that I think we are moving to a world, or we already moved to a world where pace is everything, and people are all the time chasing deadlines. The timelines are shrinking, the go to market speed is increasing, and the transformation that used to be a conversation for 6 months to 2 years to 5 years now is seen in like months and weeks. In an environment like this, I guess as a leader, it's a tough job to balance letting people grow purposefully, aligned to their own mission, connecting that to the organizational mission. And I think it's a tough job as a leader in the current environment. Don't you think so?
No, I don't think so at all. On the contrary, it's a fun thing to do wherein you allow individuals to come out and express their learnings, learn something in the first place, give them space and see the wonders that they can create, get them to align to a common purpose or their own purposes. The individual comes out as far sharper, far, what I would say, motivated, far creative than an individual who's not in that MAP framework, as I really said. It's I don't think it's difficult
any
at all. It's
any
fun.
tips you have for the leaders? Any tips, quick tips you have for the leaders, like maybe one, two, 3 points?
You know, two, three things. One, Please believe, especially for founders, that yes, your team can never be as good as you, but collectively they can achieve something that you might not be able to ever achieve, not only in terms of quantity, but also in terms of quality. The second thing is, if you want to earn space to think, to strategize, delegate like hell. Don't delegate only the unimportant aspects which you feel are not just worth your time. Delegate one of the two of the aspects which are crucial. I remember we were presenting to a board, and the onus was on me to present, given that I understood the business and was best articulated. Last minute, we took a call to let the account manager present, and this was a chairman involved, and she did a job which was much better than what I could have as an individual. She connected with the chairman at a personal level. She was able to articulate the business challenges far more better, right? And it meant, she was eventually a star of the organization. The rest of the community came and learned. So that last minute, wherein such a critical opportunity was there, wartime activity, you allow these your team to come in front and see magic really happen, as against getting them to just fix the meeting or prepare the presentation, do some research to help you look better in front of the client, right? So these are some of the examples that I have, and it's been very, as I said, it's been a very, very gratifying exercise to see talent scale, in
Understood.
this manner.
Understood. So, Avinash, you also serve in your current avatar, in your current role, startups, and you advise startups. One of the challenges that we see with so much of uncertainties and changes that are happening in the market landscape, what kind of tactical adjustments would you recommend for startup founders who are facing longer sales cycle, for example, or heightened budget scrutiny, right? Especially for the enterprise segment of clients.
The market opportunity is tough, but depending on which lens you're looking at it from, there are organizations who see the same market as being very buoyant. But yes, there are a significant few who are finding the market in terms of longevity of decisions or little coldness, as far as the vibrancy of the communication is concerned from the customer side. But as a challenge, I think firstly, what needs to be positioned, one needs to be very clear when you're going to, especially an enterprise, to deploy something new or change something that they currently have. One needs to be firstly clear how it will impact them tomorrow morning. I call it the Monday morning conversation. If you deploy this today, what is Monday morning going to look like from a change point of view in terms of the impact? Urgency sells in this market rather than fancy, rather than business as usual, right? The risk of inaction needs to be brought to the forefront in this kind of situation, wherein sometimes organizations, you know, take it a little easy in terms of expediting decisions. Secondly, let's not be very ambitious. In enterprise, you have to land first and land well, and then work out your expand strategy. In a situation wherein decisions are tough, it's great to make a fantastic landing, which is a foothold for the future. Change and novelty for an enterprise, especially large enterprises, is tough. Your point of contact, let me call it, has to be equipped, enabled to manage internal resistance. The CFO is asking
Mm.
for, why is there not a better ROI on this change? The business guys are asking for better productivity. The compliance guys are asking for something else, cybersecurity, etc., etc., etc. Enterprises basically ask, why should I spend so much of time? And they challenge decisions. They have better priority as such. You, as a service provider, as a seller, need to enable your internal stakeholder things like ROI documents pre prepared, things like simple, easy integrations, things like POCs at a click of a button to demonstrate a certain feature works, and so on and so forth. You need to equip your internal champion, so to say, within the account, within the customer. De-risking, I wrote an article called Hotel California 4 5 days back. There's a very famous line in that song of Eagles which says, "You can check out any time you like, but you can never leave." This is what is context to B2B, that you make exits contractually very, very easy, but surround them with so much of value which is demonstrated that they simply do not want to check out. They do not want to leave. They want to sustain with you for the longest. moving out feels like business suicide for them, right? Rather than locking them
Yeah,
into
yeah,
long-term contracts. So these are the few things,
yeah.
that one can do to basically drive decisions in a situation which is today.
Which brings to the same point that you earlier mentioned, which is transparency. And I think it kind of aligns and lands well. Just want to go back to that point that you mentioned here, which is it is important to land well. It is important to ensure that whatever customer is sort of investing on, whether it's a solution or a product or a platform, there is an immediate value as well as there is a promised long term value. If without an immediate value, only on long term promised value, with so much of changes happening, probably is difficult. I have seen in my own experience where I was leading customer success, one of the challenges that I used to see where we have had some challenges was bad sales. And the way I want to define the bad sales is that you looked at only on immediate value but did not really think through what is a long term value for the client. Why would you become or you remain meaningful in their journey in the longer term, just besides solving the Monday morning problem, right? So that is one thing led to many conflict and challenging situations again and again coming in the same pattern, because the moment you start doing your expansion motion, that's when that particular point will come in. And sometimes simply the match was just not right. Sometimes it was just a quarter pressure because of which we had to close, and we closed. And I understand, being in the market, we all have those pressures and we deal with. But I think in the enterprise client, increasingly that is so important. And that is one of the reasons I think a lot of these point solution products are actually facing those challenges, because from a CIO standpoint, who need to manage a portfolio of, say, 1,000 point products, SaaS products, ultimately without knowing where this will be in 3 years or 5 years time in their innovation journey, how will they sort of integrate and talk to each other, what kind of support will be provided from my vendor side, all of that becomes so sort of convoluting and challenging. So I think as a startup owner or as a startup founder, or especially point solution companies, when they are selling to enterprise, these consideration, I think what you said is very important, thinking through not just the short term but also longer term part.
I think I totally resonate with you. Entry into an enterprise is not business for the quarter. It is a strategic aspect of the next 3 years as to how you're going to look like. Your 3 year design within an enterprise account is defined as to how you made an entry. One great example comes to mind. 3 4 months back, I was talking to an organization. They are basically into AI transformation, and they picked up a very large name. They transformed their travel portal, local travel portal. Employees are being picked up and dropped out. Product is delivered, great value, great performance, but there's no growth because you made an entry with such a powerful tool into something which is not the customer's core business. Nobody is noticing. So I agree with you completely that the entry has to be very pinpointed for long term growth in an enterprise section, and there are ways to do it, of course. Yeah.
Yeah. So I want to bring in marketing once again here, because one of the thing at a marketing level, when we build a brand, right? We build a brand usually on a promise, and that promise could be through the entire customer life cycle. It's not just about the immediate impact, but what transformation it's going to bring in, depending on whom you're selling to, of course. But overall, there are promises like you, this framework that you mentioned earlier, right? Should be aligned of those 5 P's as well. So all 5 P's really need to align that. Now, what kind of role you think marketing has to play in this? A, to partner internally with their own set of colleagues cross functionally to ensure that all teams are on board and aligned with the organizational overall objective and also the brand promise. And how often you think marketing fails to do that and kind of run campaigns and maybe even run events and run workshops as just standalone event or standalone activities to maybe check mark or tick mark that their part of the jobs and work are done, and simply remain just a facilitator, but without understanding really, down the line how this is all coming through from a brand experience or customer experience perspective, right? Do you think that marketing is important for marketing to sort of partner with sales or other side of the organization, product and all, to deliver
Absolutely.
that
I opened my
experience?
conversation with that. The most important point wherein I believe marketing should take the most elevated role is launching new products. Before the launch, product is working on it, engineering is working on it. Post the launch, GTM gets involved. The marketer of yesterday, his job used to start by getting an input from product and ending with launch. That is absolutely not relevant. And then you look for the next launch to be made. A beautiful article getting created, a couple of roundtables, and so on and so forth. No, marketing needs to qualify whether the product that you're launching crosses three filters or four filters. Firstly, it is easy to buy, easy for our people to sell, easy to serve, and easy to exit as far as the contract is concerned. Why? If your sales people are not able to represent the message appropriately, which the organization wants to, right? You lost the game. It affects your brand proposition. That they launch something in media and the guy doesn't even know what he's really talking about. It's a failure of the brand. Eventually marketing needs to own this. The product is very difficult to purchase. There are integrations which take 6 months. There are complicated contractual obligations. There is so much of security, etc. Marketing needs to qualify that it's very simple for a customer to adopt, to buy. Third point is, which I think is the most important: you have deployed a service and then first there is no place to log in a ticket, or a ticket is logged, it is taking 2 days to resolve, or there is no report which is going on. Marketing, and that affects the brand message, that affects the way the organization is perceived for all its products. One instance can completely jeopardize the lifetime value of a customer, so to say. Marketing has to come in as an anchor point. Customer is signed up, but he's feeling trapped because you signed a 100-year contract with him, for example, just exaggerating. That's not on, right? Customer feeling entrapped is not good for your message that your organization is trying to create. Marketing needs to act as a conscious keeper towards what the perception in the market will be much post the launch. How to do it is collaborate. You can't do it on your own asking questions. You only end up creating enemies within the organization by asking difficult questions. You bring in people. There are teams in GTMs, smart guys in the sales team who are willing to collaborate, customer experience, and get them to interplay with each other, qualify whether this is purposeful from all these filters getting tick boxed before going into the market. I cannot really emphasize the need of marketing playing an anchor role in this, and the other functions need to respect the sales, the product, etc. Needs to respect that marketing is in the right shape and form to take a final call and ask the right questions, difficult questions, so may be, to basically qualify what we're trying to do in the market well before it goes to the market. Yeah.
Got it. Okay. So, Avinash, one of the things that I have noticed is that marketing is still so closely involved at the pre sale stage. But once the customer becomes a prospect, becomes customer, once the deal is closed, right? Is there any role that marketing can play in terms of the growth of the account, in terms of engaging the customers more deeply, or any other ways
Oh
can you
yes, of
suggest?
course. One is account based marketing, how to spread the message, how to spread the product through different messaging to different personas within the same organization or the same vertical, right? The second is, if representing customer success to the rest of the world is a pivotal role that marketing can take. I mean, there is nothing better than a reference from a customer going to the rest of the market. It really lends credibility to your message. So yeah, I think post sale, post deployment, there is ample amount of work that marketing can do. How to figure out and assess the impact of the feature to a specific persona, a specific function, and picking up ideas to replicate it across the similar type of function in the industry. It cannot come from a partner or from an advisor outside. It will come from your existing customers. And there are very good frameworks to basically help you do that. Like I talked about the customer advisory board and so on.
Awesome. So, with all of that in the context, Where do you think the future of B2B marketing is?
I keep speaking to marketers, and what's really now is AI. It's really transforming, stuff. The more and more AI is not an enemy of marketing. I think it's a great enabler. For example, some of the startups which I'm advising, we are helping them to basically sharp shoot on segmentation using tech. Earlier it was a little difficult, now it becomes far more easier using AI. Around that, determining personas, how to context your message very sharply, hyper personalize your message to a specific persona, adding not just personalization to it, but using tech to add time and context. Right, a marketing officer in a bank at that stage in a quarter end needs this help, on his retailing banking setup in the northern part of India. Right, it would vary from one CMO to the other CMO. As I said, personalization, CMO, time, and context. Right, the future of the marketer, especially in B2B, is how quickly one can adopt and bring to life these technologies into the organization that he is working for, into the market as such, therefore drive things forward. Clearly this journey has begun and is going to have more and more relevance in B2C, in B2B, as we move forward. That the marketing teams are no longer about, as I said, collaterals and, you know creating action for somebody else to adopt, uh, round tables and, forums, etc. They have to be revenue owners. Right, in B2B I'm seeing that increasingly happen. They will eventually carry concrete hard revenue goals, driving rest of the organization's customer towards that goal as such. So it's a very interesting time for the CMO, for the marketer in today's world, especially technology being changing, and especially the role of the marketer changing from just delivering some, being a back-end support function, to being a front-end important owner of revenue.
So, Avinash, thanks for sharing this. I wanted to also ask you that if you can share quickly in terms of whom you are currently serving and what kind of association or offerings that you have. Basically, how are you engaging with in your independent advisory slash consulting kind of role, and how can people can leverage your experience in the rightful way?
So, good personal question. Let me step back and say why I got into an advisory role. In the journey that I followed, maybe towards the last 7 or 8 years, as to pick up things which were impactful to the organizations that I worked for, impact on people, impact on, as I said, talent, impact on customer, impact on brand, and so on and so forth. Anything new which came to deployment, especially the tougher tasks in the company, I was raising my hand to pick them up, and the company was gracious enough to allow me to anchor those. That transformed into something which is a passion right now. I love to see impact being made. So, I advise organizations both in the enterprise play, mid market play, startups, SaaS organizations, founders, CXOs, how to go about that. Starting from right from segmentation of your, customers, segmented based strategies, how to align product to the customer's context and not just go talking about your product, how to drive, as I said, intrinsic motivation within your teams, how to get them to be clear in terms of, collaboration. And collaboration is not, in my word, co-working with each other. Collaboration also is very clear handoff points being defined. Your responsibility ends here, please hand it over to me and trust me to handle it. Frameworks in these organizations don't work, everybody handles everything, as such. So I do advise organizations on this partnerships. My last few years was all about driving some of the most critical partnerships for the company. How to, how to position yourself in front of a partner. Why should a large partner organize efforts around a small startup? What is your right to win as far as that partnership is concerned? What's the value you bring in? Yeah, so those are things which I do advise, largely GTM, marketing, product launch, and so on.
Fantastic. So, thanks for sharing that. And can you share where can people find you and what are the best way to sort of get in touch with you?
I'm available on LinkedIn. I'm active out there. Any thought which comes to me, I do publish. But I'm available on my phone. I can share those numbers. I am available on my email ID, and I am available. You might find me on a weekend on a trek somewhere close to Bangalore, or you might finally find me in one of the dance socials which happen in Koramangala on a Friday evening. I love to do that. My wife is also into we into sort of jiving and so on and so forth. We really enjoy that. And after my move on, I spent a lot of time, in that space. You might find me at a meditation center. I love to do that as well, and so on and so forth. So these are the few areas. I'm very omni-channel as far as my presence is concerned, so there are multiple ways to reach me, Jaideep.
Fantastic, Avinash. And before we wrap this episode, so what do you keep yourself? How do you keep yourself updated with the latest and greatest of what is happening, and stay on top of both in terms of the industry and as well as on the skills and other things at a personal level?
My style is learning through experiences. So I deeply interact with individuals. I do read once in a bit, not books, but topics which are of interest to me, or topics which can benefit a certain topics which I can see impact on. But I think, like our interaction which we had, Jaideep, I've learned so much from you. Every individual I go to meet, as far as my advisory consulting role is concerned, my team members of the past, my colleagues, some of my friends, I ask them questions, I work on projects, and I learn in the bargain. And that learning sort of is very grounded, very real. It's not sort of, I strongly believe that learning doesn't only come to you from books. The learning translates into intelligence once you bring it to the ground. That's when it comes to life. Theories and books and all that are just aggregate of some smart guy who's put it together. But then when it hits the ground, the shape, color, and form are very, very different. And that's what you need to keep your eyes, ears, heart, and soul open to, as you walk the roads, the streets, along with, friends, family, colleagues. So my learning basically comes from there.
Totally, Avinash. I think I totally second you. There are no probably better way to internalize your learning than by applying it. Because only when you apply, you know actually what works, what don't. Right. Till then, everything is elusive. Everything is only bookish knowledge. Is what I would say. That personally for me, that is the case. I think in last 2 years in my own journey of independent advisory and consulting, what I have experienced is that I've learned a lot more than when I was actually in the leadership position in company, because I experiment more, I probably fail more, and then I know exactly what works and what don't, and that actually completely aligns with what you just said. So thanks for sharing that wisdom and insights. Avinash, it has been fantastic you having and coming to this platform, and I think adding a lot of tons of value, because we tend to also discuss a lot within the community of marketing, but overall in the context of business, in terms of customer experience, in terms of broader strategy, creating value creation in form of, be it on the customer advisory side or customer advisory board side or on the GTM side. Ultimately, it is a collaboration, joining hands of multiple teams, aligning on organizational vision, but adding individual strength or individual functional strength to make the overall proposition much stronger. So I think you have shared some real good insights in terms of how teams can do that, whether it is building a partnership, whether it is launching a product, whether it is delivering customer experience. I think we have covered most of the key points. And I think you also shared how sales can transform from simply selling point products and features and functionalities to conversation of transformation and owning the outcome based model, right? So I think it's a huge value for the marketing audience, but broader B2B audience, and also a lot to take for the startup ecosystem as well. And it has been a fascinating sort of journey discussing some of these points with you, Avinash. So thanks for coming again and sharing your insights and wisdom on Marketing Couch.
Jaideep, the pleasure is entirely mine. I think I really relished this entire sequence, putting it together. Some great questions, really sort of took me back to my past and helped me structure my thoughts in a little better manner. I only hope it is impactful to your audience and to you. And if there's anything at all that I can further help with in terms of clarification or in terms of further build out or hear from your audience as to is there a better way to do it, more than glad, to cover. But thank you so much. This is a great platform that you have created, and I wish you all the luck, as you move forward.
Thank you, Avinash. Thank you.